Have you ever considered the mentality shift that it takes to go from renting to owning? Today, we're going to talk about that with loan officer Max Lucas and real estate agent Connor MacDougall. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Dollars and Cents, HAPO Community Credit Union's Financial Literacy Podcast. Today, we are going to get into the weeds a little bit, pun somewhat intended, as we talk about the hidden costs of home ownership, the dark and dirty truths behind what exactly you're buying when you get in there. Today, joining us on the podcast, we've got Max Lucas, mortgage loan officer with HAPO, and Connor MacDougall, real estate agent. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a bit more about yourselves.
Thank you. Over to you, Connor. You can go ahead.
All right. Well, yeah. As Scott mentioned, my name's Connor MacDougall. I'm a realtor with Redder & Company Sotheby's here in Kennewick in the Tri-Cities. I got into real estate a few years ago. My background, similar to Max, as you'll probably find out, is in mechanical engineering. So I relocated here to be with my wife. She's from the Tri-Cities. And so when I made that change, I decided I'd make a career switch at the same time, just get it all done at once. And I've been loving it ever since. It's people say it's a little bit weird. How do you take engineering and become a real estate agent? But a lot of engineers are just project managers. And and at the end of the day, that's what finding a house, selling a house, like going through the transaction process. It's all just one big project, although it's a very important project for people.
That it is.
Yeah. So same as Connor there, I got my degree in petroleum engineering. So coming from the engineering background as well, moved back here after college, thought I'd be working out at the Hanford site, but I'd written a book about personal finance and investing. So I love the financial aspect of it. Had a job at HFG Trust initially, and then moved over in the mortgage department there of Community First Bank, which was then acquired by HAPO. So now a new HAPO employee, which is very exciting, learning a lot there. And to Connor's point, engineering definitely is its own animal, but it translates really well to the financial world and to real estate. So it's been fun.
Well, I'll join the crew. Computer science, software engineering, turned marketing, and now podcast host. Yep.
So I guess engineering translates well to podcasting as well.
It translates to everything.
Absolutely. As long as you're an engineer, that's what you think, right? Yeah, absolutely.
So all of us homeowners here, I know I am. I've mentioned it multiple times on previous episodes.
Yep.
What things came about that you weren't prepared for when you bought your first home?
Yeah, so I mean, I actually probably am the most recent homeowner here.
Oh, really?
I just bought here at the end of July.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so it has been fun, but a lot of work. We're still not all unpacked, so that's been a fun process. I think for me, just the amount of things to do, but the amount of things that come up. So blinds, then you need a storage shed, and then I built out a wall in my garage and put new lights in. So it's certainly a lot of things that come up, but I think the difference to me and one of the most exciting things for any homeowner is just that you can do all that. If you rent, you don't have that ability. You have to go off of what your landlord allows or what they want to do to the property themselves. But as a homeowner, I can make the home really what's best for me. So that's one of the most exciting things for sure.
Yeah.
Connor, what about you?
I'm kind of on the same lines as Max. I like tinkering and doing things myself, call it DIY or what have you. And being able to just do something. It's your house. The bank has a lien on it, but it's your house. You own it. So if you want to put up a wall,
Tear down a wall.
Check with the engineers first, not us.
Exactly.
But like if you want to do any of that stuff and truly make it your own and make it feel like home, not just somewhere you're sleeping at night, then you have the flexibility to, and no one's, aside from the HOA, which we'll get into, I'm sure, that there's no one really telling you what you can and can't do within the law.
I know when I first got started, I was like, oh, wait, now I have to do yard work and maintain my yard, which is kind of one of those 50-50s. I know some people out there love maintaining their own yard. I am not one of those people. I will hire the neighborhood kid to come mow or an actual lawn care company. But then that's one of those things where I'm like, okay, how much of an expense do I want to incur to not have to do that thing? Hiring the neighborhood kid's relatively cheap, assuming that, you're not too concerned about how many sprinklers they destroy.
Yeah.
But even those child labor's going up. These kids are getting expensive nowadays. I guess Robux are getting expensive out there.
Back in my day, it was maybe $10 a lawn. Now, like if they're offering $20, you've got yourself a cheap lawn care service.
Yeah.
You hire that kid for life. You put him on retainer.
Yeah.
Along with like the outside of the house, you mentioned HOA. Depending upon where you're moving into, and Connor, you'd probably know this better than most of us. Different neighborhoods are going to have different items that you have to put up with or get to put up with, depending on how you want to frame it.
Absolutely. And it's funny because someone will ask you when you're looking, does this house have HOA? And there's two reasons they could be asking it. And it's either because they hate HOAs or because they love HOAs. So it really depends. And HOAs vary. There's some HOAs in town where you can't have a car parked in your driveway for more than 72 hours. It either has to change spots in the driveway or it needs to be in the garage where they see the car should be parked. So, and then there's some HOAs where it's really just a slightly glorified version of the CC&Rs, which a lot of neighborhoods have anyway. So yeah, it's one of those aspects where when you're looking, some people have heard bad stories or had a bad experience and want to steer clear, and some people have had a bad experience without an HOA, and it's a requirement for them. So it just depends on the person.
I know with my house, we do have an HOA. Our HOA is actually pretty nice. Yeah. There was a restriction on the size of the wall I was allowed to put around my backyard. Now this is where I'm at. We have great views over the Tri-Cities, and the intent behind all of those HOA rules was to protect people's views. And my first thought was, how is my backyard preventing somebody's view? But at the same time, I was like, okay, I get it. We've got a blanket rule. Yeah. And I didn't need a wall that was much larger than what we put in anyways. Yeah. And it was a very easy process dealing with them, but it was one of those that I dreaded walking into initially because I was like, I have heard nightmare stories of people having to deal with HOAs. I was like, is this going to be one of those things?
Yeah.
How much am I going to have to fight for this? Is this going to be a forgiveness versus permission type of a situation?
Yeah.
You talking about making modifications to the house, that's going to be a thing. Obviously, you're probably out looking, helping people track down homes that meet most of what they're looking for in a house. How often do you find that you get somebody as a client, you're like, we met 100% of what they wanted in the home that we actually found for them?
Has never and probably will never happen in the history of real estate. We have like a term that we throw around that like 95% is perfect. And the reason that happens is because you can have no budget where you can spend as much as you want. You can take all the time in the world and pick the exact lot that's perfect for you. Have an architect custom design every corner of the home to your exact whim and what you want. You're going to move in, and 3 to 6 months later, you're going to find any number of things that you would have done differently.
Yep.
And so that's why we tell people if you're getting close to 80 to 90% on a home when you're just shopping on the open market, pretty darn good.
Yeah. And you probably found most everything that you really want. And if there's some excess, okay, that's one thing. But if you're missing one or two things, like you need an extra wall in a garage, minor bit of modification's not a bad thing. A friend of mine just recently purchased a new home, and I think he had about a month worth of renovations that he put into the house beyond just the initial purchase. I'm going to go out on a limb here and guesstimate based off of what he told me that it was probably about a $30,000 to $40,000 renovation on top of the home purchase itself.
Yeah.
Now that sounds like it's a decent hefty chunk. And I know he did a lot to kind of upgrade the interior of the home.
Yeah.
And he was smart enough when he went into it, when he saw this place, he was like, I know I'm going to have to do that.
Yep.
So not exactly a hidden cost in that one, but for some people, if you're like, oh, this is going to be perfect, you get in there and you realize, oh, that this is not perfect.
Yep.
Now I've got to have this extra expense to get in there and make it the home that I want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I would think on that note too. So for myself, it's a new construction home. And so I picked a lot of things to make it really what I need it to be. having a laser engraving business as well, where I was doing that woodworking and stuff in the garage. And that's why I needed that extra space for the wall. But I think, it was still about 10 to 20,000 of additional costs that I had to put into it to really make it, even from new construction, what I would need to say move in ready for me.
Okay.
And I think that's where, on the financing side especially, I'll talk to a lot of my clients about, don't get too hung up on putting the 20% down. Don't get too hung up on making sure you're putting every dollar you have, even from a sale of a home, into this new home. Because I'm sure, as Connor would know too, a lot of clients get into that new house that has even 95%. And after a couple weeks, they're like, this might only have 90%, right? I actually don't like the counter as much as maybe I thought, or, I really would like that extra shop in the back, right? So the other thing to consider is that mortgage insurance. So that's if you put less than 20% down, you're going to have mortgage insurance on the property.
Okay.
And those prices have come down dramatically over the last couple of years. So it is probably about half of what it was back 10 years ago. So putting less than 20% down really isn't as much of a cost anymore as it might have used to be about a decade ago.
And I'm sure that there's some people out there that are thinking mortgage insurance. Okay, now we've got one of those extra costs that I wasn't aware of.
Right.
But like you're talking to members about this as they come in, making sure that everything's above board. This is an educational situation.
Absolutely.
Which is half the reason that I keep hearing when I talk with our loan officers, that you really do want to be coming in to talk to a loan officer first, get that pre-approval, so that when they come to real estate, you've got a good idea of what you can actually go show them, as opposed to the person that shows them is like, I really want this. Oh, that's twice what I can spend. And then you get to start all over again.
Yeah, because a lot of people rely on like a Zillow estimate or some sort of online calculator that does a good quick glance, but it doesn't do what a loan officer would do for them, as far as taking a thorough look at their information and their finances. And the absolute worst is when someone does that. They tell you, our budget's $400,000, and you go out and find them that 95% or that 90% home, and they realize their budget's actually only $375 because there's an old student loan that they hadn't put into the calculator, or their car payment, or the other two credit bureaus are lower scores than what they're seeing on Experian or something like that. So,
I think one of the things to think about personally is that if you go do an online approval, or let's say you go to Rocket and you're on there trying to get approved, they have about 10 screens that they will ask you questions on. The FHA guidelines is 1,100 pages long. So if you think that in their 10 screens, they're asking you every possible question and that their approval is legitimate, I think you probably need to think again.
It's just the power of AI.
Right, exactly, right? AI's come in and they're making that 10 screens, 1,100 pages worth of stuff, right? So I think that's where, speaking to a mortgage expert, speaking to a real estate agent is really going to be what helps you out and gets you the best information possible.
Yeah, and again, 95% is perfect at this point in time until you move in. You realize, okay, I really don't like where this thing is. Let's rearrange this. Or depending, I know when I moved into my current place, it was about 12 years old. I'm the second owner of the home. Fantastic. The previous owner was awesome. I got lucky. At least that was one of my initial thoughts, that they left almost all of the major appliances. So I moved in with a refrigerator in the basement, one in the kitchen, washer, dishwasher, had to bring my own washer and dryer. But again, that's kind of one of those things. If you're moving out of an apartment complex, are you going to get into a place that has all of these? Like I said, I got pretty lucky with that, though I think it's technically tomorrow I'm getting a new refrigerator. And the current one hasn't died on us by any means, but I could tell that it's at its like 15 to 20 year range. Like we're getting it to freeze up in certain places where it's not supposed to be freezing.
It's probably arriving sometime between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. and they'll let you know when they're there.
I think I get to find that out around midnight tonight, what 2-hour window I might be looking at tomorrow. But again, that is kind of one of those hidden things. You're like, okay, cool. I've got this random thing that I got it. I didn't need to bring a refrigerator with myself. Now I've had to purchase a refrigerator, but I've had a good number of years in this house to build up a basically a home budget account to allow for things like this. It got destroyed, as longtime listeners will know, that budget got decimated one summer when our air conditioning unit went out. And at 116, 110 plus degree days, that's not something you can wait to build up that savings account to replace.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a transition that I have completely lost on that one. Oh, I do know what it is. Outside of that, though, the other cost of this, even though I planned for it, is I'm going to have to be out of the office for that 8-hour window of time in order to be there when they do deliver that. And that's kind of that personal time off bank. Can I actually work from home? Right. I'm lucky in the fact that I can, if necessary, work remotely in certain situations. Yeah. Not everybody can do that, and that makes some of these things kind of inconvenient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something else too is that you mentioned the age of the home being 12 years old. That plays a big role. But when it comes to appliances and certain things, like you can end up in a 25-year-old home that's actually going to be less maintenance for you than a 10-year-old home, because all these different appliances, some will fail after 6 months, like infant mortality of an appliance or of something mechanical. Some will last like 35 years. You'll see a heat pump from the 80s, 45 years that you had no idea could still be running. But you don't have any control over that aside from doing the maintenance that you should and the upkeep. But the important part is looking at that specific house. So not just generalizing that a house that's newer is going to cost us less or a house that's older is going to cost us more. If the owner just did the roof in the last 3 years and just replaced the fridge and the air conditioner, some of the big ticket items, you could be in a house that shouldn't have any major expenditures for the next 5 to 10 years versus you buy a 10 to 15-year-old house. AC could be going soon. It could not. Water heater's probably ready to go.
Are all of these items in that lifetime expectancy range? Most appliances, if I'm not mistaken, are kind of a 10 to a 15-year life cycle for most of those major appliances.
Yeah. And they're getting shorter too. And it's not. I don't personally think it's any big conspiracy to make us spend more.
Planned obsolescence.
Yeah, like an F1 engine doesn't last as many miles as a daily driver engine does. It's because they're higher performance and they have tighter tolerances to work within. So the same thing's happening in our market where all these air conditioners are tighter and tighter tolerance to be more efficient, to qualify for the laws and regulations. But the trade-off there is they're not going to last you as long. So I personally don't think it's by design. I don't think it's about where it's made. There's factories all over the world that make quality products. It's more about the more we try to milk out of something when it's operating, it's not going to last as long in the long run.
Yeah, like your AC unit doesn't go out on a 75-degree day. It goes out when it's stressed at 115 degrees.
Exactly.
And of course, everybody's like, oh, why did it have to happen that day? It's always the worst. Well, yeah, because that's when it's having its toughest day.
It's been running for 72 hours straight, trying to get the house back down to 72 or 64 or whatever you got to set it to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think to Connor's point too, it really comes down to what the house is. And with buying versus renting, there are some significant differences. I know me and Connor both work with new construction here. In a new construction house, you're probably not going to have a lot going wrong. Hopefully within the first 10 years, it might be the odd, thing go wrong, but it's probably going to be under warranty too. So that's something where it might not be a lot of costs coming to us versus, when you're renting, you might not have that expense of having to fix anything, but I don't know a lot of landlords that are buying the top end appliance, right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time this stuff will probably go bad at a higher rate than it would if you owned the property.
And my guess is if we're looking at an apartment complex, they're probably buying bulk because you're outfitting dozens of apartments and you probably want that having all the same equipment in there. I would also question the speed with which a landlord might be able to accomplish repairing something. Are they under the same pressure's not quite the right word, but under the same impetus to repair my air conditioning unit as I am?
Right. When you call them and they're in a 72-degree office, they don't care necessarily as much as you in an 80 or 90-degree house about how quickly that gets fixed.
Yeah, there's kind of that balancing point of I am the responsible party. I have to do this on my own, but at the same time, I'm the only one holding me up getting these things done or making these changes. So home ownership versus having to adult. And be responsible.
Be difficult.
And it's like we're in a time too when I think a lot of large investment capital firms and stuff like that, people hear BlackRock thrown around a lot. But in general, they're starting to realize that residential real estate and people need somewhere to live. And that means it's going to be a good investment for them because it's something people are always going to need a roof over their head. And so you you start running into like this transition where the mom and pop landlords who don't raise the rent on you very often, and they truly try to get you an appliance faster, get your plumbing fixed as soon as it goes, not just hold off until the absolute last minute that the law requires them to get it fixed. Some of that's starting to transition. And so it's one of those things, like you said, that it falls to you, but the benefit is it falls to you. You have the control over what contractor you hire, whether they're going to fix it properly or whether you're going to have to call them back in a week. So there's pros and cons like everything.
Yeah, you mentioned this as like homes being an investment, and that is actually one of the other major factors here, in my opinion. If you're spending $2,500 a month on mortgage, you're paying yourself back in equity. If you're paying $2,000 a month in rent, you're paying $2,000 a month into somebody else's either into their mortgage, into their equity, or into their pocket as a company running some other type of a situation. Yeah. Now, you might not have the same costs of having to maintain the lawn, the appliances, any of those things, but you're paying yourself back with that mortgage.
Yeah.
Which kind of like what you were mentioning earlier, Max, the not putting, if you're going from one house to another, not putting necessarily that entire sale of the previous house into it, because you can end up house poor.
Absolutely.
Which is one of my favorite phrases, because you're really not. You're building wealth.
Yeah.
But you are expending more money than you would be if you were in an apartment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things to think about is just moving in general is always going to come with extra costs, right? You're never going to get it done as quickly as you'd hope. You never have as few trips as you thought, right? Mm-hmm. And you always need something more in the new house that you didn't think about in the old house.
And everybody knows that if you've asked your friends to help you move, you're A, losing friends, and B, having to buy pizza and beverages for whoever's helping.
And if you're over 30, it's time to just buy that moving company, right? Yeah. The pizza and beer is going to be
maybe invite your friends over to sit and watch the moving company work to pay them back for those times that they had to help other people move.
Absolutely. But yeah, I think that, I've had clients where we're looking at it and trying to figure out what's the best number to put down here. And I think that my advice is usually think about how many things could come up. And even if you're not putting that money down, your mortgage might be a little higher. The benefit you're getting is that resilience. You have the ability to now handle things that come up, that AC unit, that move that costs more. And that resilience really is hard to price, but I bet you it's worth more than you think about it going into it, right?
Well, and again, like how much of a difference are you going to make on your monthly mortgage with that? How does that work into your monthly budget?
Right. Yeah.
Is cutting $500 a month off of your mortgage going to really work for you in the long term as far as like planning out on a monthly? Because your mortgage isn't going away anytime soon once you get into this. 2015, I think, is one of the shortest terms that are out there. 15, 20, 30 years on these. You're going to be paying for this and generating equity. And then if you're anything like me, at given time, you're going to probably take out an equity loan or refinance when rates get to a point where you're just like, oh, if I refinance this, I can cut this much off of that payment, change my monthly expenses, or pull that equity out and do some of these other projects or replace some other items.
Yeah. And I think that's honestly one of the big parts about home ownership is even if your mortgage is higher right now and maybe even higher than your rent, one of the benefits we really have here in America is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Mm-hmm. So friend Connor here coming from our friends up north there in Canada.
Yep.
Not really something you guys have up there.
No, it's a 25-year mortgage is the most common. So we don't go to 30, 25 is the limit for a residential mortgage. But they almost force you into refinances every, I think 8 years is the max. I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 years is the minimum. I hadn't actually purchased a home in Canada before moving here. So it's kind of secondhand information from friends. But I do know, I think it's somewhere around 8 years. That's as long as you can lock in your terms for. And like Max mentioned, like the ability to refinance a mortgage and know for 30 years what the interest rate you're paying is going to be. You could pay some extra property tax. Your home insurance could go up, but the biggest portion of that payment is going to be your principal and your interest, and being able to know what that is for 30 years.
Oh yeah.
That's what you're sacrificing in the short term it's one of the things you're sacrificing for is that consistency and not having anyone else that's going to just add 10% or 11% to your payment just because they need to.
Because you can't guarantee what your rent's going to be lease to lease.
Yep.
Most of those are either annual, and it's even potential in some of those contracts that they can raise it by a certain amount in the middle of the year.
Absolutely.
And there's a big bill passed in Washington State recently that was it says it's in favor of tenants, but it basically caps the amount that landlords can raise rent on a yearly basis. But if you look at it, I think it's 11% is the kind of the high point. It's still a pretty big bump. If you're going from $2,000 to $2,200, that's $200 a month. There's still plenty of room in there for landlords to raise the rent and make money. So it's and I think there will be more landlords that are raising it the maximum every year for fear that they get behind and they can't catch up on their finances.
Which means that, if you've got a maximum, you should probably be planning from your own financial standpoint to have to deal with that maximum over time.
Yeah.
We already know that homeownership is becoming a little bit more difficult in the current financial standing. Rent's not any better.
No.
And so it is, I feel like with the volatility that you're looking at, there's a lot to say that, hey, maybe some of these hidden costs aren't actually really bad by any means. You're gaining a lot of benefit by planning ahead and undertaking these. We've had a couple of episodes with a couple other real estate agents. We've talked about the phrase, date the rate, marry the house, type of thing. Refinancing being a major factor. I know that when I did refinance, it was in that glorious time frame of around that 3% rate, and so I know that I'm locked in on a very wonderful rate for quite a while at this point in time. And I was also able to use that equity to pay off a bunch of higher percentage debt that I had. Just lump it all under, like, if you can get something at 3%, that's totally worth it.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the best pros of getting a mortgage is it allows you this opportunity to consolidate debt as you pay it down. You have the ability to take out a HELOC or a home equity loan. And then you could also get a cash out refinance mortgage, which you can use that money to pay off those higher end, higher interest rate debt.
Or build your laser engraving studio in the garage.
Absolutely. That's a big part of it.
And
part you need for sure.
And I love playing devil's advocate on things. I don't know if you've ever seen the meme where it's all argue with anybody about anything for $1 or whatever it is.
Doesn't even cost me $1.
Yeah. So I always love to play devil's advocate on things and look at it from the other perspective. And so I think that's important too, where we, like you talk about date the rate, marry the house, date the rate.
Yep.
I rarely say that, so I can't even get it straight these days anymore. But there's just these, it all depends. And I have friends who are working like the finance industry in like banking and mergers and acquisitions. And for people like that, there's no argument that they can take that money they would have put in a down payment. They can manage the money themselves because they have a knowledge of that industry, and their returns they get are going to be well outweigh what they would with a house. But like Max touched on, even those guys, they say like the leverage of real estate and having that asset that any bank and institution will look at, and they're comfortable lending money with that as the collateral. That's something that you don't get with an account that's all stock market, because no one trusts that stock market won't dip 10 or 20% in a given week, depending what tweet is sent out by whatever CEO or political leader. So that leverage, even people who are very in the finance world and can make like great returns on their own personal investments, there's still benefits to homeownership and real estate investment that.
Yeah, I was going to say it. I know in our area here, it has been a long time running since property values have dropped. They seem to be regularly on the rise, which means you buy it at this price. By the time 30 years has gone by, it's probably going to be worth a heck of a lot more.
Absolutely.
I think we have 2 negative appreciation years in the last 25 or 30. Neither were 2008, funny enough. I think it was 10 and 12, and it was like negative 0.5% and negative 0.1%. Like it was more or less a plateau. Like the amount it went down wouldn't have wouldn't have changed
you
much.
wouldn't notice it if you were to zoom out to see those 25 years. That little bit of a dip probably doesn't compare to the years that have been positive.
You look at it on a graph, and the 1 year is like so thin. It's like it's just one pixel for the printer, like one little line of ink. That's it. So
if you make it small enough, you can't even see it. So it's all good.
And that's the beauty of Tri-Cities, and what I sell people on is if I'm looking for like a clickbait headline, I'll say Tri-Cities real estate market is a bubble. And then people kind of perk up and they go, well, tell me more about that. Mm-hmm. And I don't see it as a bubble that's about a pop. I see it as a bubble because it's insulated from a lot of the things that affect other economies. Obviously right now we have like federal government going through downsizing, and there are contracts being cut back for some of the contractors around Hanford. But what's happened, which is amazing over the years, is because we had that funding for the Hanford project and for these federal projects for so many years, it allowed other companies to come in and get a foothold in the industry, and it really diversified the economy here. And a lot of the economies and the businesses that you look at around here, they're not things that get hit hard when times start getting tough and recessions come. So
yeah, pretty stable employment environment here in this area.
Yeah, for the most part. And there's always outliers, and like there's always going to be layoffs and people having to lose their jobs or relocate or something. But when you look at somewhere like the West Side, Seattle, with the tech industry, the job market and real estate, they kind of go hand in hand a bit. And you see, we don't ride the highs nearly as high, but we also don't really have to deal with the valleys as much either. It's more steady Eddie here, where you just get a more consistent growth of real estate.
And I think to the point there too on is there a bubble? I get a lot of clients ask me, I'm just going to wait for the bubble to burst and stuff. And I think one of the things that comes up with that is people always assume the next recession or the next, economic disaster is going to be exactly the same as the last one, right? And they almost never are. They're almost always something that we never saw coming, right? In 2020, no one predicted in December of 2019 that a pandemic would be the thing that tanks the economy in 2020. And so I think that going into it and going into real estate, you got to realize what we're looking at when we look at prices. So in 2019, the big headline was always how underbuilt the U.S. housing market was. So since the Great Recession there in 2008, builders were really reluctant to build as much as they had. Yep. And the banks were really reluctant to lend to any builder that wanted to build anything. And so we had an environment where there wasn't nearly enough housing. People couldn't get homes. They were qualified, but there wasn't anything for them to buy. Yeah. And so now when people are worried about, is this a bubble? What's going to happen next? I think we need to look at that environment and realize that even though prices went up so much, there's still so many people out there that are willing to buy. And if anytime a home price comes down 5-10%, they're going to snatch it right up. Yep. And so there's such a floor on the prices that there's just no real chance at this point that we're going to have that type of a bubble that we did in 08.
Yeah, if you've got a bunch of people out there waiting to snatch up the inventory as soon as it starts to drop, then that demand is still up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which means that as soon as, you've got to be the first person willing to go out and grab it and not be looking for it to drop even further, or else you're going to be waiting forever. Yep. And what is that opportunity cost at that point in time? If we're talking $2,000 a month in rent, $14,000 a year. Wow, that is way off. $24,000 a year. Yeah.
I wasn't going to correct you on it.
Hey, feel free to at this point in time. I mean, that's a pretty hefty decision to make, to be like, I'm just going to wait a year. I'm just going to throw $25,000 to this other guy while I wait for my opportunity to go out and buy this thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that, I feel like there's so much, it's expensive to own a home, but you're paying yourself more often than you're not.
Right. How expensive is it to not own a home? I think is another way to look at that, right? How much, if you add up all the rent you've paid over however long you've been renting for, how much have you paid, right? At some point, you're going to start looking at those home prices and think to yourself, man, I've about bought a home and how much rent that I've paid.
Oh, yeah. And I think that there's also a factor. There are definitely people out there whose lifestyle, whose income range and everything absolutely fits much more of a renting type of a scenario. But I don't think that's the majority of people. No. I think the vast majority of people are basically trying to work through the market the way it is, trying to be ready to have stuff in place. For people who are still kind of in that range of trying to figure out how they can shift over. What are some of the additional costs that you would tell them they need to pay attention to, as opposed to just what the mortgage is going to be, in order to know that they're financially ready to go actually have a conversation about what it is that they're going to need to buy into a home?
Yeah. I can start if you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Max touched on when he moved in, he kind of was mentioning some things. That's something that people, they might know about, but if you move into a brand new construction home, it's something you should be aware of, is that you don't realize how many things previous homeowners have invested into a home. Mm-hmm. Blinds for the windows, the appliances, if they've got, let's say, fridge, washer, dryer, there's an easy $5,000 you don't have to spend. Blinds can be anywhere from $2,500 to tens of thousands, depending how fancy you get with it. There's all that kind of stuff. Even back in the day, they didn't used to put like paper towel holders and towel hooks on the walls. Like you'd have to buy those and install them. So
you might be lucky enough to get those things in a package if you're doing a full custom construction, where you're working with your builder in order to get those. We had a previous episode talking with 49 North about
Jordan
custom
Matilla.
construction and all the things that come along with that and planning ahead. But in a lot of these, that's not necessarily the case.
And one of the big ones is starting to become backyard landscaping, but fences. Because a lot of people will be looking for a home a lot of times because they either have kids or a dog, and they want to be able to open the back door, and it's a fully fenced yard, and you know that they're stuck within four walls, or however you want to look at it. And so that's a big one, where fencing's $55, $60 a foot these days for a 6-foot block wall fence, and then not including gates.
And again, depending on your HOA, you might not be able to do a slat board fence. You might need a masonry block wall or some other thing to fit the design of the neighborhood.
So there's the obvious cost of like upgrades and things that you're doing to the house to make it more yours and make it work for you. There's also things like irrigation. Like, is a home on city water, or does it have irrigation, and how big is the lot? In some cases, if you got a small lot, you're actually better off being on city water. It's cleaner water. There's not as much weeds and dirt and things that come through the system. But if you've got a big yard, then when you're paying by the gallon, it can add up when it's 100, 112 and you're trying to keep your lawn green.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's one. We've talked on a few maintenance items.
Like maintenance, I think, is one of those things that I don't think necessarily falls into what I'm aiming for with this, where I'm thinking like, how much is insurance going to be monthly for your home? How much is utilities going to cost you? You mentioned the water, but if you're on city power and you've got a 4,000 square foot home versus a 2,000 square foot home, you're going to be burning a lot more electricity to run that air conditioning unit to keep everything down.
I think one of the big ones too, kind of in that same vein, is property taxes that we've touched on a little bit here, but I think that one is one that have come up in past clients, particularly who, when they see their home values rise, now they're all concerned, wait, I got these property taxes to pay. I thought I locked in at one rate and one payment. So property taxes and insurance do go up usually every year, and you are going to have to pay that. And if you hadn't paid enough for the previous year into that escrow account, you're going to be making up payments that next year.
What people out there, if they see that, it's known as a shortage. And you're going to have to put in that gap to cover it, and then most likely raise that regular mortgage payment in order to prevent a shortage next year.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things, though, to keep in mind with that is you're paying more property taxes because the value of your home has gone up.
Exactly.
And so it's in some ways, a high quality problem. A double-edged sword, right? Because you have, you're paying more, but you're paying more because the underlying asset you own is now worth more. So you potentially have more equity there. So you've made more money, even though you are paying more.
Exactly.
And I don't know if you were teeing me up for this or if this was just happenstance, but if someone's looking to, like, say, rent a single family home versus buying one, you're going to be paying the electricity and all the utilities either way, most likely. Oftentimes landlords will, they'll rent you the home, but you actually, when you get the lease, you have to put the electricity and all those utilities in your own name, and then you're responsible for paying them either way. So it's not always the case.
Sometimes you can get somebody who bundles it in. They'll be like, oh, yeah, no, we're just going to add $500 on top of the monthly rent for utilities. We know that it costs us $300 for that regularly. So,
in case they are drawing a lot of electricity, running the AC with the windows open or something, So there are more costs for sure, but to me, it doesn't come down to necessarily the hidden costs. It comes down to like what's important for you, your significant other, your family, whoever that is, because the peace of mind of knowing what your payment's going to be for 30 years, of not having to wonder if your lease is going to get renewed and you're going to have to pack everything up and move right before the school year or in the middle of winter when it's just not ideal to be doing that stuff.
Yep.
That's truly what a lot of people end up paying for. It's no secret that right now buying is more expensive than renting. If someone's coming to town and they're strictly focused on their monthly budget, renting is the cheaper option right now, without a doubt. And it could be for 5 years, 10 years. We can't say for sure what things are going to look like. But it's more about like your day-to-day life and your peace of mind. People are willing to pay extra for that.
Yeah.
It's like anything in life. You can pay extra for luxuries. I really wish it didn't feel like that housing was a luxury at times and being able to own something is a luxury, but it can be for some people. And I truly recognize that. So, for some people, it's not necessarily, doesn't come down to the dollars and cents as much as it does what's right for them and what are they willing to pay a bit more for to give them a better quality of life.
And on the utility front too, I want to add though that it's the same. We get back to the landlord, when they're going to, not that there's anything, particularly evil about a landlord, but when they're deciding what to put into this house, they're probably looking at what the cheapest thing for them is. They're not paying the utilities in most cases. So are they going to get the most energy efficient thing? Are they going to get the windows that are triple pane so that you don't have to worry about what the utility usage is? Probably not. Versus for yourself, if you know you're going to be in this house for a decent amount of time, you can invest early on. That saves you money in the long run.
Yeah. I know my most recent investment for my house was solar panels, which again, kind of in that thing, I know the expense, I know the range of time it's going to take for that to pay itself off for myself, but it changes my monthly budget in the long run as far as who I'm paying, how much I know I'm paying, as far as this project is cost me X dollars. So I know what my monthly payment is for my solar panels. Yeah. But now my electrical bill is almost nothing.
Yeah.
So like those type of things, I kind of traded some volatility with that for a consistent monthly payment. And of course, I feel a little bit better because we've got a green energy source that's kind of helping everything out a little bit.
Yeah. And you're one step closer if like Armageddon never comes, to like being self-sufficient in your house.
Off the grid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just
off grid within city limits.
Yeah, right. Just got to factor in like the doomsday prep room after that. So put that into your budget as well. Hidden costs there. Didn't factor that one in before. So,
all right, gentlemen. So what do we have? Final thoughts on this one. Hidden costs. Obviously, most of these aren't really hidden. They're there if you look for them and have a conversation. People should be smart enough to go educate themselves on kind of the things that are coming about. What do you have for final thoughts for people out there?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for final thoughts is that these aren't necessarily hidden costs as we've touched on, but they really aren't going to be hidden costs if you come talk to a mortgage expert and a real estate expert. Those are the places that online still their business plan is to get you through the process, right? They don't care about educating you. It's really not a benefit to them. Versus for me and Connor, our business is going to be built on referrals and on clients coming back to us. So the more educated you are, the better your experience is, the better we're going to do going on with our business. So that is really the benefit of working with people in person, coming and seeing us, is that there's just so many more opportunities to educate you on what's coming up and to educate you of what the costs really are going into it.
Yeah. And as far as final thoughts, the one hidden cost that we could talk about that hasn't been mentioned is possibly special assessments. If the city had to repave your sidewalk for some reason or redo the sewer line or something, there's situations where that's passed on to the homeowners through a special assessment or through your taxes. Same with HOA. If you're living in condos or townhomes or something and they're redoing the roof for everyone, if they don't have enough in their reserve account for all those HOA dues you've been paying, you could get hit with that bill. So like you guys have both mentioned, there's not too much that's hidden if you go talk to the local community experts and work with someone who does this every day for a living. Special assessments is one that maybe isn't talked about as much that might surprise people. But yeah, my final thought would be nothing we're going to say should be convincing people. A lot of times mortgage lenders and real estate agents, people talk about us being in sales. We're trying to sell ourselves to people and show people that we're good people. We want to help them. We want to accomplish their goals and dreams. We're not out here trying to convince someone to buy versus rent. It's more like we provide the information and people can then make an informed decision about what's best for themselves. So
yeah, educate them, let them know what's going on, because you want that relationship in the long run to be a good relationship.
Yeah.
Get referrals, bring people back. That is effectively sales, but it's doing sales the right way.
Yeah.
Making sure that people are actually satisfied with what they get and no lemon law situation
Yes.
with the house that you've turned around and sold them, or for the work that you have done to get them where they want to be with their life goals.
As much as I love the feeling of handing someone a key to the house for the first time when it's all said and done, it honestly feels better when you talk someone through all their options and they decide that it's not the right choice for them. Because that means that if they'd gone to someone else who was more focused on their own intentions and just trying to convince someone to buy, they could be unhappy in a short period of time and have a lot of regrets. If I can help them make a decision, whether it's to buy or to rent, either way, when they go the other direction sometimes feels better than when you've helped someone that whole time to accomplish that goal.
I mean, I don't think any of us want to see people out there get themselves between the financial rock and a hard place of, oh, now I'm stuck in this situation. I don't know where to go from there.
Yeah.
Education, hidden costs should never really be hidden. They're things that, like I said, given enough time, you should be able to figure out what you're getting into with most of these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think all three of us agree that investing into a property, into real estate, into a house is a good financial move for the vast majority of people out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think unless, as Connor put, unless you really are coming down to what is my monthly payment going to be, and right now that is reversed to where renting is going to be better, but there are a lot of times throughout history where it's not, where owning is better. And I think when we saw that really in 2020 there, when you can get those really low rates.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure at some point in the next few decades we will have a time, maybe not 2020 rates, but they will be lower than they are today.
All right.
And so I think that that's a great opportunity for people to get in, and eventually we will be getting some better rates.
Perfect. Yeah. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. And until next time, this has been Dollars and Cents, HAPO Community Credit Union's Financial Literacy Podcast. See you later.